All right, welcome everyone. This is the time of year where I rant and rave about tax scams. You guys are probably seeing all kinds of opportunities for tax savings all over the place on your feeds if you're anything like me. Of course, I see all that because I'm a tax lawyer, so the algorithm knows I like tax stuff. I would say of all the advertisements for tax savings opportunities that come across my feed, I would say 50% are just outright scams that will get you in trouble. And then maybe 30% are not scams, but um, perhaps of questionable legitimacy, depending on how you apply it. And maybe 20% are totally legit. So they are out there because it's that time of year when people are thinking about this stuff. And so we want to make sure that we know how to recognize these things and avoid them like the plague. So when you think about dealing taxes, as always, in all of my webinars and classes, we have to get in touch with how we feel about it first. How does it make you feel? Maybe there are empowering emotions. Maybe there are disempowering emotions. There's no right or wrong answer. There's only how you feel, and how you feel is how you feel. And it's valid. Nobody gets to tell you otherwise. How do you feel about dealing with taxes in your business? Maybe you feel great, in which case, great. That's awesome. Yeah, there you go, Dave. That's pretty much my attitude. I have no problem paying what I legally owe. I have no problem contributing to society. Um, but I don't want to pay more than I'm required to, of course, right? Sorry, excuse me. Like I said, a little bit of sore throat. I'm gonna add some hot water to my tea real quick. Ugh, sorry about that. Overwhelmed, Charlie. I get it. The loopholes and restrictions. There are lots of both, for sure. So, lack of knowledge and empowerment when it comes to taxes means that problems fester until it's too late. You've probably all heard the stories of people who they forget to file 1 year, or they procrastinate on it. Then 1 year becomes two, becomes three, becomes four. Before you know it, it's a massive problem. Anxiety about tax trouble sabotages our ability to build our business and earn income. Right? People are like, well, if I make a lot of money, that means the tax man's going to come after me. So I don't want to make a lot of money. And I will say, as long as you're doing your taxes properly and taking advantage of the rules that are meant to benefit you, then having a big tax bill is the problem we all want to have. If this time next year my tax bill is $500,000, what does that mean about the year I had? It means I had a great year, right? And I have seen people turn down big contracts because they were afraid of paying taxes on it. In particular, I have multiple examples of folks who they don't live in California. They turned down $500,000, $1 million contracts in California because it meant they would have to file and pay 8% of it to the state of California. And I'm like, well, sure, you didn't pay that 8%, but what did you give up? You could have kept 92% of it, right? I mean, come on. But that was not a rational math-based decision. It was a anxiety-based decision, right? When we're thinking out of fear and anxiety, we're not making the best choices. And when we lack knowledge and when we don't feel powerful, we're susceptible to trickery. There's a lot of scam artists who want to sell us things when it comes to tax savings opportunities. And then we're also ignoring all the benefits that the system has to offer. A lot of us in this community run small businesses, or our spouses run small businesses, which means we've been chosen as the winners by the tax system. Being in a small business is the best place to be. The tax system has chosen you as a winner. Yeah, there you go, Dave. Take it as a challenge, right? Look for all the rules. On the other hand, if we have knowledge and we feel powerful, we eliminate problems before they happen and before they get out of control. We have confidence that we can build our business and do it safely. We avoid the hucksters who are trying to sell us the magic tax beans. In fact, I used to run a webinar called Magic Tax Beans. Maybe I'll get back and do that one again. And we can use the system to reduce our liability legally. So, what we're going to talk about today is some warning signs for bad tax advice, the red flags you want to watch out for, specific examples of scams that are currently being sold to the transformational industry, being marketed hard for the transformational industry right now, and why following the rules helps us grow and scale our business better. Excuse me. And of course, an opportunity for more honest and practical guidance on how to overcome that tax anxiety. And for anyone who's watching or anyone who's here as part of the second Saturday series, you are already in the workshop that we'll be talking about today. So for anyone watching who doesn't know me that well, my name is Ian Foster. I got my law degree from UC Davis in the late 90s, which suddenly seems like a long time ago. I'm a licensed attorney and I practice in the state of California. I spent nearly 2 decades in government service in multiple government tax departments. I've dealt with sales tax, income tax, property tax, uh, even more obscure taxes, things like the timber yield tax and the cigarette tax. I mean, there's a lot of different kind of taxes out there. And I have audited, investigated, and prosecuted tax scams and tax shelters. Indeed, that was my specialty while I was with the government, was not auditing regular folks, but really going after the scams and the illegal shelters was my specialty within my specialty when I was with the government. And now I'm trying to pass on all that inside knowledge to you good folks. So let's talk about warning signs and the red flags that we want to watch out for. So the first warning sign is what we call a transaction that lacks a non-tax business purpose. A legitimate transaction that works will make sense apart from the tax consequences. You'll have a good reason for doing it, whether or not it saves you money on taxes. Or in other words, you have a business purpose for it that's apart from the tax consequences. You do it because it makes sense for your business. That's what we call a non-tax business purpose. If you're engaging in the arrangement only to save on taxes, that becomes a huge red flag, and the government will want to take a look on it. In fact, there are penalties that will apply if the government determines that you did not have a non-tax business purpose for the transaction. The government can hit you with penalties and reverse the whole thing. But abusive transactions, they only make sense when you start looking at the tax benefits. You're only doing it for the tax benefits, or it only makes sense, or it's only profitable. Like there are lots of arrangements that are a loss for your business on paper, but they suddenly become a gain when you take into account the tax benefits, right? That's a sign that it may be abusive. Not always. There are legal ways to do that, right? Like rental properties is one of them. I have a rental property that's a loss for me. And that's rental property is sort of the classic legal way to lose money and write it off on your taxes. A lot of people do it. That's half the reason to get into renting something out. But at the same time, I am also renting out an actual place. It's not fake. And in our case, I'm providing housing for someone who really needs it, who would have a hard time otherwise finding a place to live. But still ask yourself, if not for the tax benefits, would I still engage in this transaction? If the answer is no, it's a red flag. It's not always illegal, but it is a red flag and a potential audit risk. Another warning sign is circular transactions. What do you guys think I mean by circular transaction? It's just what it sounds like. The money flows around. Your left hand pays your right hand, pays your left hand. Yeah, see, you got it, Charlie. Yeah, you're just passing money back and forth. By itself, there's nothing illegal about this, and you have good business reasons to do it. Some of you know my beautiful wife and I operate three businesses, and those three businesses pay each other money back and forth. But it's pursuant to agreements that we have in place, and everything's done at market rate and market value, and it's done for a business purpose, and it doesn't actually save us much in taxes, if anything. We do it to stay legit, to make sure that the three businesses operate properly, right? So, like, for example, we have a physical office in Northern California. We don't rent three offices for the three businesses, right? One business rents the one office and it sublets out to the other two. So, yeah, we're passing money back and forth, but all the income and deductions are being reported, so it functionally washes out on the tax return. But we're still keeping the formalities in place. I'm not giving one business free rent just because I own that business. It still has to pay rent just like anybody else would to maintain the separation between the businesses. But they become a problem when you start hiding the income to generate artificial deductions, right? So if one of my businesses was paying rent to the one that rents the office, the main one, and I deducted that rent on the return but did not report the income, all of a sudden that's going to be a problem. But I do report the income. So, like I said, it doesn't actually save us anything in taxes. We have a business reason for doing it. Welcome, Kate. Good to see you. And also, just trust your gut. Look out for magic bullets, or like I said earlier, the magic tax beans, right? If somebody's trying to sell you a bag of magic tax beans, you're going to think, I don't know. That sounds funky. Remember that every tax benefit has a corresponding economic cost. Tax benefits do not come out of thin air. If you want to deduct something, you have to lay out the money and spend it, right? If you want $1,000 deduction, that means you just spent $1,000. There's an economic cost to the tax benefit. That's how our system works. Every tax benefit has an economic cost. So if someone is selling you on a tax benefit that seems to have no economic cost, there's a huge red flag. Somebody says, hey, I can get you this $1,000 deduction, but you don't actually have to outlay $1,000. Ooh, the government's going to have a problem with that. Watch out for pressure to act quickly. And watch out when the people who are selling you on the idea are making money on it. Right? Because then their incentive is to sell as many of these as possible, as fast as possible, whether or not it helps you. Watch out for outrageous claims. You ever heard these things? You guys seen the commercials on TV with the guys? I've been fighting the IRS my whole career and I beat them every time. I always beat the IRS. You guys seen that stuff? So 18 plus years I was with the government. I don't know how many cases I worked on. It was certainly hundreds over 18 years. Any guesses on how many cases I lost over 18 years with the government? It is more than zero. Good guess. It is more than zero. And it is less than five. I lost one case in 18 years. So now, how plausible does it sound when you see the guy on TV saying, I always beat the IRS? Wait a minute, but I was there for 18 years, hundreds of cases, I lost one. Right? So it's not plausible. These guys are losing cases and they're losing them all the time because the government does not prosecute cases they don't think they can win. Now, the government does lose from time to time. They don't win everything. I did lose the one case in 18 years, but I never took the case to court unless I was really sure about it. I didn't want to waste time prosecuting things. I didn't prosecute 50-50 cases. I went after the sure things, right? To take down the real abusers and bad guys and make sure they paid back what they owed and what they had stolen. The funny thing, too, That one case is still a sore point in my career. It was the one case that I thought was the biggest slam dunk easy win ever. But it only takes one judge on one day to disagree with you, right? But I thought this case was a slam dunk. I still think the case was a slam dunk. Should have been a slam dunk easy win. And any other judge on any other day, I would have won it. We had the metaphorical smoking gun. We had the internal company memos basically confessing to what they were doing. That, hey, I guess you can't win them all. A lesson the Chiefs learned the other day on Sunday. Can't win them all. And if it sounds too good to be true, right? Just like any other thing in life, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Uh, Charlie, in this case, yes. In fact, I even know who paid them off. But in this was when it was legal for tax judges to get paid off in California. It is no longer legal. They have restructured the system. In fact, they restructured the system shortly after that case, and my case was one of the examples. But in California at the time, it was legal to pay off tax judges. And by legal, I mean totally legal. They were exempt from like the bribery rules and stuff. That's all been fixed. Much more difficult now. So some of these common tax scams. But yeah, Charlie, I did as well as I could have, given the circumstances. Yeah. You're going to see they're a little bit like card tricks. You guys seen some of these card mechanics? Heather and I are poker players. And why do we never play in home games, right? Especially with people we don't know? Because there are people who can stack that deck and they can put that ace of spades exactly where they want it to, and you won't even be able to see them do it. So we basically only play in casinos, or if we play at home, it's with friends, people we know who aren't going to do that. So one of them, have your business rent your house. This is one of the bigger scams being promoted right now. Now, by itself, this is legal and legitimate. And there are reasons to do it. And excuse me, I'm having a ton of sinus drainage, so I apologize to everybody here and who's watching. I always know I'm feeling better and on the downside of the cold when it all comes draining out. My body's getting rid of the yuck. So sorry about that. So again, there's nothing illegal about having your business rent your house. You can do that. There are reasons to do it. And if you document and reporting everything properly, what's not legal is creating artificial tax deductions without reporting the corresponding income. That's where it becomes a problem. Have you guys heard of the Augusta rule? This is getting a lot of talk over the last few years. So there's something called the Augusta rule. That's the informal name for the code section, right? It's not what it's actually called. It allows you to rent out your home, your personal residence, for up to 14 days and not report the income from that rental, right? So let's say you're going to be on vacation and not in your house, but somebody else wants to take a vacation in your town. You could rent your house to them for 14 days and not have to report the income. So here's what you do. You're going to say, I'm going to have my business rent my house for $1,000 a day. My business is going to pay me $14,000. My business is going to claim a $14,000 deduction and not report the income. Boom. Magic. I just created a $14,000 tax deduction out of thin air. It's magic. And I'm not out any money. You guys see any problems with this, given the red flags we talked about? What are the problems here? What do you think might go wrong? Why do you think the IRS might have a problem with this?
It's a lot of money that's tax-free. It doesn't seem that that can happen.
Yeah, well, Kate, yeah, your gut tells you that something's wrong with that, right? it doesn't seem like the tax code would just allow you to just eliminate 14 grand from your taxes like that. David, exactly. It's not an arm's length transaction. Charlie, same thing, not market value. Yeah. Does it seem like a circular transaction? Yeah, you're just paying money to yourself. Would you bother to do all this if there was no tax benefit for it? Probably not. Would you set up all the paperwork and everything? Yeah, David, there's no business purpose. Yeah. You wouldn't normally do this if there was no tax benefit. And what I see people doing is they're like, um, also they double up sometimes. People will do this and claim the home office deduction, which will become, if you do this and you claim the home office deduction, you'll get audited for sure, because that's going to be seen as double dipping, right? But what I've seen folks do is say, well, I'm going to do a photo shoot in my living room. And so therefore I'm going to have my business pay rent for my living room for the week. I mean, come on. Come on. I found myself saying that a lot when I was prosecuting these types of things for the government. I was like, come on, guys, come on. Really? Another one, have your business pay your kids. Again, by itself, this is totally legal. Nothing wrong with having your business pay your kids, especially if your kids are doing actual work and everything's being documented and reporting properly. Look, I started working in my parents' family business when I was 14 years old, right? My parents ran a manufacturing shop. So when I was 14 years old, I was cleaning up steel chips and sweeping the floors and climbing down into the coolant sumps of giant machines. There's still a part of me that misses that nasty smell because it's so nostalgic, right? Of the rotting cooling fluid down there. It's funny the things you miss when you get older, right? But they paid me a wage. I was a W-2 employee of the business. I clocked in and clocked out like the other employees, and they treated me no different. In fact, my parents went to lengths, great lengths, to make sure the other employees knew I was not getting special favors just because I was the owner's kid, right? If I did something wrong, I got in trouble, just like anybody else, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. And they deducted that, and I filed a tax return. Stacy, yes, it is being recorded and no problem being late. We're all good. Now, your kids can receive up to, I think this might be out of date. The figure's probably a little bit bigger now because they adjust it for inflation. So I don't remember the exact number now, but it's somewhere around 14 grand. Your kids can receive up to 14 grand if they're minors without filing or paying taxes on it. But it has to be earned income. Earned income generally means performing a service and getting paid for it, as opposed to passive income, right? So let's say you pay your 15-year-old daughter 13 grand and she helps you sort paperwork and develop your website. She deposits the money in her own bank account. No problem with this. I have no problem with it. The IRS has no problem with it, right? You're paying her for real work and make sure the wage is fair. And especially I definitely have no problem with paying your kids to help you with tech stuff like websites, because I hate to say us old people, tech becomes more of a challenge for us, right? The kids can do it like it's nothing. And she's got her own bank account. She deposits the money in her bank account. It's not a problem at all. Totally legit. Your business gets to deduct that money, and your daughter may not have to report the income. That's legit. She's doing real work. She's earning the money. Now, let's say your kids are too young to do any real work and or they just don't want to. Now, of course, if they don't want to, I would say, too bad, so sad, go to work. My brother and I, when we hit 14 years old, we were told you're going to work for the family business. There was no choice involved for us. So let's see if a 5-year-old daughter She's not going to be able to develop your website and help you with the paperwork. So you pay your 5-year-old daughter 13 grand in return for her name, image, and likeness rights. You guys have heard of NIL rights? This is all the rage in college sports right now. In fact, a basketball recruit, BYU just paid a basketball recruit $8.5 million for his NIL rights to go play for BYU. He's making more than some pro basketball players as a freshman in college. So you're going to pay your 5-year-old 13 grand for name, image, and likeness rights. And what are you going to do? You're going to take beautiful family pictures and put her on the website. Since she's 5, she can't really control a bank account. The bank won't let her. So you have control of the money. Maybe it goes into your account, or maybe there's an account in her name. I mean, when I was 5, I had an account in my name, but I didn't control it. My parents did. So wherever the money is deposited, it's into an account over which you have complete control and can withdraw anytime you want. So you're not out any money. Nobody reports the income. Boom, magic. We just created a $13,000 tax deduction, and you didn't have to outlay any money to anybody. Any problems with this? What do you guys think? What are the issues here? And this is pretty common. This one's done a lot. Yeah, Dave, it becomes circular, right? Because you still have the money, no outlay of cash. And then also, is your daughter's name, image, likeness rights, is it really worth 13 grand? How would you compare that? Where are the comps? You know, she probably wouldn't get paid that much for a commercial that goes on TV. It becomes sort of arbitrary. You're making it up. And the other problem is it's not earned income. She's not performing a service for the business. She's just posing in a picture. All right, so this one will get you in trouble. Another one I see a lot, artificial intercompany loans. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with intercompany loans, right? My wife and I, our businesses do intercompany transactions all the time. We do not do intercompany loans because they are very complicated for tax purposes. Instead, we have the businesses pay each other for real value and real services provided. But let's say you live in New York, and because you live in New York, you formed your LLC in New York. New York is one of the higher income tax states. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to Vegas, have a nice weekend, or maybe just do it all online, but you might as well go and have a good time while you're at it. You're going to set up a separate LLC in Nevada where there's no state income tax. Nevada has impressive public services for a state that has no income tax. How can they afford to do that? Why can Nevada provide great state services even though they have no income tax? Where's their revenue coming from?
Property tax or sales tax? Yeah.
Yeah, property and sales, they do have higher property tax. Their sales tax is pretty low. There you go, Stacy, the casinos. They have a huge tax on the casinos, huge gambling tax. They also have very high taxes on mineral extraction. Nevada has a lot of oil, gold, silver. So they tax the casinos and they tax the mineral extraction. So when you have that sort of source, you don't have to have an income tax. You can still have good revenue for the state. So you go to Nevada, you set up the other LLC there. It's got no income tax. You drop some cash into the Nevada LLC's bank account, right? It's going to have its own bank account. Now, the Nevada LLC doesn't really do anything. It just sits there on paper. It has exactly one business operation. It loans money to the New York LLC. And you're doing the loan at market rate of interest, right? Which is good. Any intercompany transaction should always be at market rate. You don't give yourself a discount. So the Nevada LLC's only operation is to loan money to the New York LLC at market rate. And now the New York LLC gets to take a deduction for the interest payments against its New York income tax. And the Nevada LLC pays no tax on the interest income because there's no income tax in Nevada. Boom, you just saved 8%. It's magic. Very little trouble to set this up. A filing fee in Nevada, open a bank account, draft a quick loan agreement, boom. You've created a deduction in New York with no corresponding income in the other state and no outlay of cash. We see any problem here? You guys see whether my IRS might not like this so much? Yeah, they're not big fans of this, as you might imagine. In fact, I used to prosecute cases like this, although it was much more complex. These were multinational corporations involving dozens of or hundreds of entities. And you can imagine the flow chart of the loans moving back and forth everywhere, right? When I had to write my legal briefs on these cases, I had to attach pages of flow charts to show the flow of the money. Yeah, and Charlie, no business reason. Now, you can form that LLC in Nevada anytime you want. You just can't use it to artificially generate deductions, right? All right. I apologize again. I'm pounding this tea, my lemon ginger tea. I'll be right back. I got to add some more water to it. Okay. Thank you for your patience. I tell you, I've learned when you have a sore throat or sinus drainage, lemon ginger tea is my new go-to for that. Lemon ginger. Oh, clears it right up. Cuts through the yuck. All right, so this is one that is being pushed especially hard to the transformational industry. And so, in fact, there are some conferences you'll go to where they are pushing this. There are some networking events online and offline where you will find people selling this one, the Irrevocable Spendthrift Trust. Now, like the other things, there's nothing inherently illegal about setting this up, but you do it for non-tax reasons. You don't do it for the tax benefits. So someone comes to you and they say, for 20 grand, we'll draft an irrevocable spendthrift trust. Again, there are reasons to set up these kinds of trusts, and people do it all the time. I've helped people set them up for legitimate reasons. But here's where they add it on. And then you'll never have to pay any personal or business taxes again. What does your gut think immediately when someone says, pay me $20,000 and you'll never have to pay taxes again? Sound too good to be true? But they say, no, don't worry. Here's a 100-page legal opinion written by real lawyers, and it will be written by real lawyers, and it's going to be super complicated. In fact, it's going to be so complicated, you're not going to understand a word in it. Right? Why do they do that? Why do they give you 100 pages that you can't understand? Right? Why would they do that? Why don't they just write it up simply? They want you to think, oh, it must be legit because look how fancy and complicated this is. A bunch of lawyers wrote it and it's so complicated. It must be legit. Yeah, there you go, Stacy, to make it look legit. Oh, Stacy, I just saw your question. There are good uses for LLCs in Wyoming and Nevada. Um, they don't usually give you the tax savings you want. You can sometimes get some privacy protection, and there are sometimes there are other benefits to it, probably more than I can go into here. So I have no problem. In fact, I've helped people set them up. But the point is, don't use them for artificial tax savings. Sometimes you have a complex corporate structure where there are advantages to having one of them set up in Wyoming or Nevada. Um, a lot of my Canadian clients, when they do business in the US, they're Canadian residents. They're not residents of any US state. So when they want to do business here, where do they set it up? Wyoming or Nevada, where there's no state income tax. Right. So that fancy legal opinion looks very smart, very professional. And here's what they say, they guarantee you'll get the promised benefits. There's a reason I put guarantee. I'm going to put in big giant air quotes, little rabbits. They guarantee you'll get the tax benefits and they will defend you if you get audited. Oh, great. Well, good deal. What's the loss here? What am I out? They're guaranteeing that I get it and they're going to pay for my defense. Read the fine print. Read the fine print. So when you get audited, and I say when because you will, in fact, the IRS has publicly said they are auditing and prosecuting these exact arrangements. And of course, the folks who sell you this, they forget to tell you that the IRS has already publicly stated that this is abusive and will get you in trouble. They just forget that part. Actually, one of the people, there's a, I'm not going to name the person. There is a person who is very prominent in the transformational industry selling this to coaches and healers and speakers and authors. That person appears to be genuinely unaware that the IRS has taken a public position on this already. And I don't know how they could be unaware. It's sort of your job to know when the IRS has taken a public position on the thing you're talking about. And that it's right there on the IRS website. You can't miss it. So when you get audited, because you will get audited, in fact, the IRS is so concerned about these that they're auditing all of them. They're not going to assume it's legit. They're auditing all of them at this point. So this is a classic example of the bad apple ruining the whole barrel, right? The people who were using these legitimately are getting caught up in the audits because it's such a problem. And they're trying to crack down on the illegitimate uses. So then you get audited and you go back to the company and you say, all right, you guarantee the tax benefits. You said you would defend me. And the company says, you didn't read the fine print. We will defend you after you concede the audit and you pay all the tax, all the interest, and all the penalties. And then you go to district court and file a refund claim. Then we'll defend you. And you're like, wait, but I got hit with $50,000. I can't afford to pay all that. And the company says, well, then we can't defend you. Right? They will only defend you after you pay everything the IRS says you owe, and then you try to claim a refund for it. They're not going to come defend you before you pay it because they know full well that this is a loser. They know these lawyers who drafted the fancy legal opinion, they know the IRS has taken a public position. They know that courts are deciding against this. They know that. You guys see problems here? This one should be lots of problems. I mean, for one, do you think trust law works that way? Do you think Congress just accidentally wrote a law that says if you set up this kind of trust, you never have to pay taxes again? Did they just, or they just forgot to tax this kind of trust? Or no, it doesn't. These laws are written by smart folks. I used to write tax laws when I was with the government. Stacy, yeah, it's got fraud written all over it. Yeah. Might as well have a big red stamp that says fraud. Yeah. So watch out for this one. Again, You can set up these kind of trusts for other legitimate reasons, usually have to do with estate planning or passing money on to heirs. Usually the reason you use a spendthrift trust is if you're trying to pass money off to one of your kids, but your kid is, for lack of a better term, a fuck up, and you don't want them spending all the money at once on drugs and alcohol, and you want to dole it out slowly just to pay their rent. That's why you would set up one of these things for legitimate reasons. But you still pay tax on all the money. The tax doesn't go away. There's nothing magic about it. And my contention is that your business will actually thrive more if you follow the rules. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, my second favorite name of a Supreme Court justice. My first favorite name is the great Justice Learned Hand. Have you guys read it? That was really his name, Justice Learned Hand. My second favorite name of a justice. Taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. And if you pay lots of tax and you're following the rules, it means you're making lots of money. This is the problem you want to have. If you get $1 million tax bill next year, it means this year you crushed it hard. It means you had the best year ever. We should all want that problem. I would love next year at this time to see, oh shit, I owe $1 million in taxes. That means I made tons of money this year. And I'm cool with paying my fair share off of what I made and contributing back to society. Side note, my favorite Supreme Court justice of all time is Sandra Day O'Connor. I was a huge fan of Sandra Day O'Connor. Very sad when she retired, sad when she died. But she was my favorite. And no coincidence, of course, she was a tax expert. She wrote a number of the most important tax decisions of the last century. And believe it or not, if you're a business owner, the tax system has chosen you as a winner. If you own a business, if your spouse runs a business, you're the winner. Our tax system should not be choosing winners and losers. That's a bad thing to do with your tax system. It creates distortion on the economy. But ours does choose winners and losers, and it's chosen you as a winner. You might as well act like it. Use everything that it has available to you. So right now, my wife and I, we used to be, when we met 10 years ago, we were W-2 employees. Now we run 3 small businesses. We gross the same amount now as we did as W-2 employees, but we pay roughly a third of the taxes that we used to off the same gross. Plus, we work half the hours, which is, another great thing. Working half the hours, grossing the same amount of money, paying a third of the taxes. Why are we paying a third of the taxes now? Because we're small business owners. And the rules are designed to benefit all of us. There are so many ways to reduce your taxes legally. In fact, there are so many ways that I'm always amazed when people cheat. It turns out cheating is harder than just doing it legally. You have to go to more trouble to cheat. You have to create artificial agreements and artificial transactions. You're going to all this extra trouble to cheat when you could have just done it legally. I mean, come on. Like I said, I was always saying this when I was the governor. I was like, come on, guys, come on. What are we doing here? And boy, I mean, if you guys were a fly on the wall in some of the meetings, I had meetings where the taxpayers' lawyers would come in and they'd say, here's the document and it says X. And I'd look at the document and it doesn't say X. It just doesn't. I'd say, no, it says Y. And they're like, nope, it says X. And I'm like, I'm looking at it. It doesn't say that. They're like, yes, it does. And I'm like, here, show me where on there it says that. And they're like, well, you just have to read it. Well, I did. I literally just read it. It doesn't say that. It's one of those weird things like they know they're lying and I know they're lying and they know that they're lying. Um, in fact, I should probably not share this publicly, but it's like when I'll say the analogous situation is when someone who's obviously pregnant says they're not pregnant. And you're like, but I can see that you're pregnant. And in 3 months, you're going to have a baby. And 3 months later, they do have a baby. And you're like, why did you tell? What was the point in lying about that? I mean, what, you know, I don't get it. Those kind of lies made no sense to me. That taxpayer in that meeting got in a lot of trouble, let's just say. When they could have come in and settled for a lower amount if they wanted to cooperate, I could have saved them money because I don't want to deal with the case for years. So just comply. Getting audited and defending yourself is incredibly costly in time and money. It's a distraction. Anybody here been audited before? I've done audits from the government side. I've been audited as a private business owner, and I am much better equipped to handle audits than most people because I worked for the government. Do you think I enjoyed the audit process when I was on being? No, it's a huge pain in the ass, right? It was hours and hours and hours of my time. It went on for a year. I didn't want to deal with that. I had other shit I could have been doing with that time. That's no fun. An experienced tax attorney like me is going to charge you anywhere from $500 to $1,000 per hour to represent you in this audit. How long do you think it takes for my bill to pile up to where you're paying me more than you would have saved in taxes? Not long. And the price for engaging in the abuse of transactions is very heavy. So if you do one of the things we talked about and the IRS decides you were deliberately being abusive just to avoid taxes, you're going to owe all the back taxes that you would have had to pay anyway. And I don't mind paying back taxes. Look, if I get audited and I have to pay taxes, the back taxes, my attitude is, well, that's money I would have had to pay anyway. I don't mind that. Then you get the interest that compounds daily. I don't even necessarily mind the interest. I understand why they charge it, just like banks and everybody else does, the time value of money. Except the government compounds it daily, not monthly. So it adds up. Then there's a penalty that doubles the interest rate. Oh, hang on now. Anybody want to pay that? Anyone want to pay 10% instead of 5? No, thank you. Not me. Then there's a penalty that ranges from 25 to 40% of the underlying tax. So before you know it, let's say you engaged in this abusive transaction, you saved in quotes 10 grand in taxes. After you get audited, suddenly you owe 20 grand. You can see how doubling the interest and adding the penalty basically doubles what you owe pretty quick. Why are the penalties so steep on these things? Why do you think? What's the point of making it way steeper than just normal penalties? Thanks, Kate. Appreciate it. Why would the government write into laws? In fact, I wrote one of these laws, the 40% penalty, the California's version, I wrote it. Yeah, Charlie, they have to make it severe, right? They want to deter you. Mhm. David, exactly. A cheating costs everybody. When someone cheats and steals money from the treasury, that money still has to get made up somewhere. Who ends up paying all that? Us. We do. Right. In California, I used to say you're stealing from teachers and firefighters, and people would say that's an exaggeration. I would say, hey, no, it's really not. 40% of the state budget goes to education right off the top, which is fairly typical for a state. People have no idea how much states spend on education for their citizens. In California, it's roughly 40% of the budget goes to education. So you're stealing from teachers. And the rest of it is like police and firefighters and prisons. And then some of it goes to other things like healthcare. The problem we had in California too was people would cheat deliberately and play audit roulette. Have you ever heard that term, audit roulette? Right? You're just gonna spin the wheel and see, do I get caught? Do I not get caught? and they would actually do calculations. They would say, okay, we can save $1 million in tax, and here's the chance we get caught versus the chance we don't get caught. And they would factor all that in and say, you know what, it's worth it to cheat in the long run. In the long run, if we cheat, we will save money. So we had to add all of these penalties so that they could change their calculation up front to say, oh, hang on. Now, if we get caught, it's going to cost so much that it's not worth it anymore. So this is why we get educated. We understand how the tax laws work and we plan ahead. We understand how the tax forms work. The tax forms, believe it or not, have a certain logic and structure to them. And you want to know what your return should look like. And this is even assuming you have a great accountant who you trust. You don't want to blindly trust them. You you still have to sign the return under penalty of perjury. You're still responsible for it. You want to be able to look it over and understand it. And in fact, if you understand the laws and the returns, you're going to make a better client for your accountant. They're going to be able to do more for you. Because the fact is, every business decision you make every day has a tax consequence. Every business decision has a tax consequence. And unless you have your accountant or your lawyer on speed dial, paying them by the minute, you can't always ask them how it's going to work out, how it fits in your plan. So learn what to deduct legally and how to do it. Know what income you have to report so you're compliant. And let's push through that anxiety, right? And that fear. Dave, I like what you said earlier about seeing it as a challenge, right? That's a great, empowering, positive way to look at it. It's not fear. This is a challenge. Let me figure this out. Use the rules to my benefit because they are here to benefit me. Let's figure it out. I love it. So this is why we have our tax filing workshop. This is part of our second Saturday workshop series, although this month it's on the third Saturday because of scheduling conflicts that came up months ago. So those of you, so Dave, you and Kristen are in the second Saturday series, I believe. So you guys are already in this weekend. Hope to see you there. This is a one-day hands-on experience and is very hands-on. This is one of my more hands-on workshop-y workshops. We're going to learn how to file our business taxes properly. You're going to gain a lot of knowledge to help you plan for the year coming up. It's very practical guidance, and we're going to use realistic, real life examples, and you're going to get templates and spreadsheets you can use right away, including things like profit and loss spreadsheets. So when it comes to risk reduction, we're reporting our income. The Strong Compliance Foundation is reporting your income to make sure we're reducing risk. So we're going to make sure our income is being reported properly and avoid the common mistakes that people make when they're reporting income. And then you start saving the money by learning as a small business owner, how much can I really deduct? And what expenses can we deduct? And we're going to take advantage of specific opportunities and real life examples from your peers. This is why we do all this in community. You guys know, who have been back to my stuff a lot. We do it in community so that we can do this together. We're going to learn how to categorize our income and expenses. And the categories are going to translate well into the tax forms. And that's where you get the templates, the spreadsheets that I use for my own profit and loss statements. You don't have to use them, but you might like them. You might not. You might find them as inspiration. You'll get access to them. These I created when I got out of government. I thought, given my government experience, I'm going to create profit and loss spreadsheets that I wish people were using when I was with the government that would have made everybody's job easier. And we're going to go through common small business tax forms line by line, literally line by line. So you can understand how the forms work, understand the logic of the forms and the math of how the forms work. And again, you may have an accountant, you may use TurboTax. I use TurboTax because we have 3 businesses and our taxes are complicated. And so it's just easier for me to use TurboTax to do it. But also, I don't hit the e-file button until I review them to make sure TurboTax did it right, because I know what the form's supposed to look like. I know how it's supposed to look and how the math is supposed to work. And TurboTax does make mistakes. Every year, I'm correcting at least 2 mistakes that TurboTax is making on my returns before I e-file them. I couldn't correct those mistakes if I didn't know what the forms are supposed to look like. Right. When I was with the government, this is one of those, if I had a nickel for every time someone said, it's not my fault, TurboTax did it, I would say, well, I'm sure TurboTax did do it, but you still owe the tax. If you're mad at TurboTax, take it up with them. So you need to know how to fill out the forms and how to read and understand them. Again, even if you're using TurboTax, H&R Block, your accountant, or whatever, you need to know how the forms are supposed to look and how they come out. We're going to have love seat time for anyone who wants to get on and ask questions about how they're doing it, realistic examples, and of course, plenty of time for Q&A. So it's a one-day workshop live on Zoom coming up this Saturday, February 15th. Ongoing access to recordings of the workshop, templates you can use to track the income and expenses, and going through the real life tax forms line by line. So when you enroll, you're going to get instant access to the templates and tax forms we're going to go over. You get ongoing access to the recordings and any other content that we might bonus in. You're going to get the schedule and the links. Oh, look at that, March 11th. It's not March 11th, it's February 15th. This is an old slide that got copied and pasted in. My bad. Coming up this Saturday, February 15th. Sorry about that. And of course, we do it in community. So you get access to someone like me at my hourly rate. This would be thousands of dollars. You're going to avoid the unnecessary audits because you'll know the red flags after today in the workshop. And again, even in the most simple audit, I'm going to charge you $5,000 plus. You don't want to get audited and have to pay someone like me more than you're saving in taxes. It's not worth it. Avoid the penalties. We talked about some of the penalties here and how they can pile up. And of course, the confidence of peace of mind I find to be priceless. You need to feel your power. You need to have that confidence. You need to know not just you're filing right now for your 2024 taxes, but going forward in 2025, this is the time to learn this stuff so that your year coming up, you can make the good decisions. Because come December 31st at midnight, your tax liability is basically set. Do you realize that? Once midnight strikes on December 31st at the end of this year, your tax liability just is what it is. It's just math at that point. It's just math. It's the decisions you make all year long leading up to them that is either going to save or cost you in taxes. So you have to understand that stuff throughout the year as we go through it. So you can join for as little as $197 today, plus 2 more payments of $197, or for the best deal, do the full pay option and join for one low payment of $547. And it's at taxfilingworkshop.com. That's taxfilingworkshop.com. I can drop it in the chat. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm also going to bonus you guys into I used to run a course called Tax Law Made Easy. I have not run it in a while. But I will bonus you guys into the evergreen version of Tax Law Made Easy, which has like 20 different modules that dive deep into income deductions, how you take advantage of stuff for small businesses. We go into capital gains and passive and active and how did the tax system work. So everybody will get bonused into Tax Law Made Easy. And I normally sell that evergreen for an extra 500 by itself, but you guys can all get bonused into that if you want to sign up for this workshop this week. So, all right, drop it in the chat. Again, anybody who's watching, if you're in the second Saturday series, you already have access. Dave, you know what? I'll grant it to you guys. You want it? I'll give it to you. You get the bonus too. Sound good? You guys have been amazing, wonderful parts of my tribe. You know, having you and Christian around as in the community and the tribe has been awesome the last couple of years. So yeah, you can get it too. Very cool. Stacy, the training will start 9 Pacific, noon Eastern on Saturday. It will last. This is one of my all-day trainings, so it's roughly 5.5 to 6 hours. It sort of depends on how many people are able to come live, how many questions we get. And there will be break times too, since this is all day training. We'll be taking breaks every hour or so just to make sure we can, you know, get some fresh air, use the bathroom, get a snack, whatever we need to do. Yeah. Very cool. Any questions? We're good. Good to see everybody.
So basically like 9 to 3, 9 to 4, something like that
Yeah, yeah,
ish.
yeah. Roughly
Pacific
nine to
time.
three. Yeah, because
Got
you're
it.
in the city, right, Charlie? So
Yeah,
yeah,
got
so
it.
roughly 9 to 3 your time. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, got it. And I just wanted to say before, when you were talking about the one loss, that was a gigantic win because you changed tax law. If you had not
Um,
lost that case, it could have still been going.
it could have. I wouldn't say mine was the only case, but it was one of the examples that piled up that
It was the
finally,
trigger.
yeah, it was the
So,
trigger. It was the straw that broke the camel's
yeah.
back that the California legislature finally started looking at what was happening and realized we need to reorganize. So they took powers away from that agency and those administrative judges, gave it to a new agency, a new set of people, set up stricter rules where they have to report any conflicts of interest now. They have to recuse themselves if they have a financial stake, all that kind of good stuff, which before, like I said, they were expressly exempt. And California has some of the strictest ethics rules in the country when it comes to conflicts of interest and bribery and everything. And in California, shit will land you in jail. If you violate some of California's interest rules, you can land in jail, or you can even be barred from running for public office for life. There's a weird little loophole in California law, not even a loophole, it's actually intentional. If you accept a free train ticket as a politician in California, you are automatically barred from running office for life after that.
Free
Why
trade,
train?
not
Why
a plane
train
ticket,
tickets?
because it
Because
was before planes were the mode of transportation.
yeah, this was, California was a big time railroad state. The railroads 100 years ago ran the state of California. The railroads ran everything, and they were giving free railroad tickets to all the politicians. And so now in California, I was working for a politician once. I had to learn these rules because I had to be the ethics advisor for several politicians, Republicans and Democrats. And one of them was like, "Cool, I just got a free train ticket." Like I'm like, "Oh my God, no, give it back, give it back, give it back." And he's like, "Why? It's just, it's $100 ticket." And I said, "You're barred from office for life if you get on that train. Don't do it." Yeah, so California is very strict, but they had exempted some of these judges from all those rules. And you're right, Charlie, I should look at it as a win because it was sort of the final thing on there
Yeah.
that made them change the laws. Yeah. So you're right. I should look at it differently. There's always a way to reframe things, right? Isn't this why we work in the healing industry? You know, because I hear it when I help other people reframe, and here you are helping me reframe because we don't hear it in ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
So no,
They're gonna
thank you,
help you
Charlie.
reframe on Saturday.
I'm gonna reframe it. It was a win. It was a big, my one loss was not a loss. It was a win that changed things for the better. There you go. Look at me. I'm all like, yeah, ready to go now. I'm a T-Rex, man. Yeah, very good. Stacy, great. Hope to see you on Saturday. All right, thanks anybody. Any additional questions or I'm off? All right. I have to clean the kitchen and vacuum and do all that kind of fun stuff. So, love you all as usual. See you guys soon. Take care.